Helios Academy stood on the edge of a silver cliff, overlooking the great ocean of the planet Arian. The water below shone like liquid glass, calm and peaceful. But inside the academy, nothing was calm. Students hurried down bright halls, teachers barked orders, and training drones buzzed overhead. For most cadets, Helios was a place of pressure and noise. But for one girl, it was a place of silence. Lyra Vance always sat in the back corner of every class. She chose the last seat, far away from the windows and far away from everyone else. While other students whispered, joked, or practiced their speeches, she kept her eyes fixed on her tablet. Her hands moved quickly over the screen, writing notes in a steady and precise way. She never asked questions, never raised her hand, and never joined any groups unless a teacher forced her to. Most students did not understand her. To them, she was simply the quiet one, the girl who never spoke, the girl who always wore the same plain uniform with the same calm expression. Some thought she was shy. Others thought she was strange. A few even believed she was not very smart, because she never showed her thoughts in class. But Lyra did not care what they believed. She did not come to Helios Academy to make friends. She came to learn. At the front of the room, Instructor Hale tapped a hologram with a long metal pointer. He was tall and serious, with sharp eyes that could catch even the smallest mistake. Attention. He called, "Today, we review crisis diplomacy. This is not theory. This is survival. Out there in the galaxy, one wrong sentence can start a war." Most of the class straightened in their seats. Most, but not Lyra, because she was already sitting perfectly straight. Hale's eyes swept across the room. When they reached Lyra, they paused. He did not know her well. Few teachers did, but he always had the strange feeling that she saw more than she let on. He continued, "In the last 50 years, humanity has made contact with 14 new species. Most wish to trade, some wish to learn, and some wish to test us. Diplomacy is our first defense. Not weapons, not ships, our words." The hologram shifted, showing an alien species with long curved horns and white eyes. These are the Vorzan. Their culture values strength and strategy above everything. They test other civilizations to see who is worthy. If you cannot match their tactics, they will not respect you. A few students laughed nervously. Hale frowned. "Do not take this lightly. A Vorzan test can destroy an unprepared colony." Lyra's hand tightened slightly on her tablet. She knew that. She knew it better than any other person in the room, but she said nothing. One student, Yalin Crow, raised his hand. He was one of the most popular cadets at Helios. Confident, loud, and always surrounded by friends. "Instructor, is it true that the Vorzan only go after weak targets?" he asked. Hell shook his head. "No, they go after unpredictable ones. They want to see how you react when you have no plan." Yalin laughed. "Well, if they ever tested us, I think we'd pass just fine. Humanity is unpredictable by nature." The class chuckled. Lyra's eyes lowered. She knew better. Unpredictability could be dangerous. It could save lives or cost them. Half an hour later, class ended. Students gathered their things and began walking out. Lyra closed her tablet, slid it into her bag, and moved toward the exit. Two girls near the door whispered to each other. "Did you see her again today?" One said. "She didn't say a single word. She never does," the other replied. "Maybe she's afraid to talk." Lyra walked past them without reacting. It was easier to ignore the whispers. She had done it her whole life. As she walked down the hall, she heard footsteps quickly approaching. Yalin appeared beside her, smiling. "Hey, Lyra, right? You're in our group for the field evaluation next week." Lyra stopped. Her eyes lifted slightly. Field evaluation. She had not forgotten. She never forgot anything. "Yes," she said softly. Her voice was calm and controlled, as if she had practiced every word. Yalin grinned. "Great. We're doing a survey mission on some small colony. Should be easy. Maybe you can tell us more about yourself on the way." Lyra blinked once. She was not sure why he cared. "I have nothing important to tell," she replied. Yalin laughed. Everyone has something. You just have to try talking. Before she could respond, a voice called from behind them. Cadet Vance. It was Instructor Hale. Lyra turned. Yes, sir. Hale studied her with that same unreadable expression. A word, please. Gillan gave a small wave and walked off. Lyra stepped toward Hale. He crossed his arms. You've been moved to Class Sigma for the field evaluation. Lyra's eyebrows rose slightly. Class Sigma was the Academy's top-performing group, the best of the best. I was not aware of this change, she said. Hale nodded. It was ordered this morning. Why? That is not for me to say. Lyra waited for more, but Hale said nothing else. His eyes lingered on her for a moment, and then he turned and walked away. Lyra stood in the hall for a long second. She did not like surprises. She did not like changes she could not predict, and this one felt strange. Too strange. She continued walking through the academy, passing bright halls full of students and screens displaying galactic news. She reached the training courtyard where combat drones moved in smooth loops above the ground. Cadets practiced defense drills, firing stun shots and shouting commands. Lyra stepped to the side, observing the drills quietly. She watched foot placement, reaction times, and mistakes the instructors ignored. Her eyes followed every detail. Analyzing things faster than most people could speak, across the courtyard, she heard two boys talking loudly. Hey, check it out, one said. There's the ghost girl. Seriously, she never joins any of the drills. She just watches like she's judging everyone. She probably can't even hold a blaster. Out. Lyra's jaw tightened. She could hold a blaster. She could fire one better than any student in the courtyard. But no one needed to know that. It was better to stay quiet. Better to stay small. Better to stay invisible, because invisibility kept her safe. Later that evening, Lyra sat alone in the academy library. It was one of the few quiet places, filled with warm lights and tall shelves of digital archives. She opened her tablet and reviewed the files for the colony. Her class would visit a small mining settlement on the planet Kazara. Population: 482, known for exporting rare minerals. No major threats reported. No history of conflict. It sounded simple. Too simple. Lyra scrolled through the data again, searching for anything unusual. A missing supply report. A broken communication relay. A weather anomaly. But everything looked normal. She leaned back in her chair, unsure why she felt uneasy. She had learned long ago to trust her instincts. They had saved her life more than once. As she read through the files for the third time, someone sat down across from her. She looked up Instructor Hale. He folded his hands on the table. Cadet Vance, you are still working. Yes, she said. The mission files are incomplete. Hale raised an eyebrow. Incomplete? How so? No record of the colony's security measures? No map updates from the last 2 months. The communication logs end too early. Hale's eyes sharpened. You noticed all that? Yes. He leaned back slowly. You see more than the others. Lyra looked down at her tablet. I only pay attention. Hale shook his head gently. Most cadets pay attention. Few observe. He paused. You will need that skill on Kasara. Lyra frowned. Sir, is there something you are not telling me? Hale hesitated. He looked as if he wanted to speak, but then his expression hardened. You will know soon enough, he said. Get some rest. He stood and walked away before she could ask more. Lyra stared at the empty chair he left behind. She felt the uneasiness spread deeper inside her. Something was wrong with this mission. Something big. And if she had been moved to the top class without explanation, then someone, somewhere, expected something from her. But why? She closed her tablet and took a slow breath. She could not let her thoughts spiral. She had spent years building control. Years training herself to stay calm. Silence was her shield. Silence was her safety. But as she walked back to her dorm room, she could not shake the feeling that silence would not be enough this time. The stars beyond the academy. Windows shimmered like distant sparks. Somewhere out there, on a quiet colony, Far from the busy halls of Helios Academy, danger was waiting, and soon Lyra Vance would have to face it. For now she was silent, but on the battlefield, she would not be. The transport ship Aurora Lance cut through the dark of space like a silent arrow. Inside, the cadets of Class Sigma sat strapped into their seats, each wearing the blue and black field uniform of Helios Academy. Their helmets were clipped to their belts, their packs secured under the seats. Most of them whispered nervously, trading theories about what their field evaluation would be like. Lyra Vance sat near the back, as she always did. Her hands rested calmly on her lap, but her eyes were sharp, scanning every corner of the ship. She had learned long ago that danger did not announce itself. It crept quietly, like a shadow waiting for the right moment. Across the aisle, Yolande Crow leaned forward and grinned at her. "Big day, huh? Our first real mission." Lyra nodded lightly. "Yes." Yolande raised an eyebrow. "You think it'll actually be interesting? Or just another boring survey mission?" Lyra paused. She did not like to guess. Guessing led to mistakes. "We will see when we arrive." Yolande laughed. "You talk like an old soldier? You know that?" She looked away, saying nothing. At the front of the cabin, Instructor Hale stood with his arms crossed. "What?" "Hing the cadets." His presence kept everyone quiet after a few minutes. The hum of the engines filled the room. Finally, Hale spoke. "We will land on Kasara in 30 minutes. Remember, this is not a combat mission. You are here to observe the colony, assist with their report, and return. Stay in pairs. Stay alert." He looked directly at Lyra when he said the last words. She lowered her eyes. The ship descended through the planet's atmosphere with a low, steady rumble. Outside the windows, clouds rushed past like white waves. When they broke through the last layer, the cadets could finally see the surface. The colony was small, just a cluster of metal structures surrounded by dusty hills. Smoke rose from some of the buildings, but only thin trails, like steam drifting into the sky. "Looks quiet," Yolande said. "Too quiet," Lyra murmured. He frowned. "What do you mean?" But before she could answer, the ship touched down on the landing pad with a soft thud. The door slid open, letting in the dry wind of Kasara. The cadets stepped out. Blinking against the sunlight and swirling dust, Lyra walked near the back, her gaze sweeping over the empty streets. There were no workers, no guards, no welcoming party. The colony felt abandoneda. Shiver ran down her spine. Hale noticed it too. "Stay close," he ordered. Helmets on, cadets obeyed, sealing their helmets and activating the built-in HUD displays. Lyra followed silently as the group moved toward the central building. She kept her posture relaxed, but her mind was alert. Every shift in the wind, every echo, every shadow drew her attention. Then she heard it. A faint, clicking sound. Rhythmic, metallic, not natural. Her heart tightened. She recognized that sound. "Instructor Hale," she said quietly. He turned. "Yes, we should leave this area. Now." Hale frowned. "Explain." But before she could speak, the clicking grew louder. A red beam shot from a rooftop down. Lyra shouted. The beam slammed into the ground where the cadets had stood a second earlier. A shockwave blasted outward, throwing dust and debris into the air. Screams echoed through the colony. Hale yelled, "Ambush!" "Take cover." The cadets scattered, diving behind metal crates and broken walls. Lyra grabbed Yolande by the arm and pulled him behind a barrier. Just before another beam carved a burning line through the ground, her breath was steady. Too steady for a cadet, Jalen stared at her. "What was that?" "Warzon scouting fire," Lyra said, eyes scanning the rooftops. "High precision. They want to hurt us, Warzon? Here? But this is a survey mission. Not anymore." Overhead, dark shapes moved across the rooftop stall. Armored figures with curved horns and glowing helmets. The Vorzan fear rippled through the cadets. A girl shouted, "We need to call the ship." But when a cadet tried to activate the comms, the screen flashed red. Signal blocked. Hale cursed under his breath. Damn it, they cut communications. Everyone stay low. Lyra peeked over the barrier for a half-second. For enemy shooters. 2 drones. 1 heavy unit on the far side of the street. She analyzed their positions almost instantly. Jel looked at her, confused and afraid. What do we do? But Lyra was already moving. She took off along the wall, running low, her feet silent on the ground. Yalin stared after her. Lyra. Where are you? She didn't answer. 2 Vorzen fired at her, but she slid behind another barrier just in time. The beams struck the metal with sizzling cracks. Hale shouted from across the courtyard. Cadet Vance. Stay with the group. But she ignored him. The cadets needed a line of sight broken. They needed time, and she could give them that. She waited for the heavy unit to shift its aim. Then she sprinted across the open space, reached a fallen drone, and tore a loose wire from its arm. Jalen's voice rose in her cum. Lyra, what are you doing? She didn't answer. She worked quickly, twisting wires together. Pressing the power cell against a cracked panel, the drone's engine sparked then roared. She shoved it forward. It slid across the ground straight toward the heavy Vorzen. Explosion lit the sky. Fragments of dust and metal flew everywhere. The shockwave knocked the heavy unit backward, disabling it. The cadets gasped. Jalen whispered, She's crazy. But it worked. Hale stared at Lyra, shock flickering across his face. Lyra took cover again. Instructor, you need to move the class to the south building. It has reinforced walls. You will be safe for 3 minutes. No more. Hallie narrowed his eyes. How do you know that? Lyra hesitated. She could not tell him the truth, but the firing started again, louder and closer. Go, she shouted. Hale didn't waste more time. Class Sigma, fall back. Move, move. The cadets ran toward the south building, ducking under blasts. Lyra covered the rear, throwing small debris to create noise distractions. Forcing the Vorzen to divide their attention, she moved with precision, much precision. Every step had purpose. Every glance had calculation. Jalen saw it and felt a chill. You're not just a quiet girl, he whispered. They reached the south building and sealed the entrance. The cadets panted heavily, some trembling, some crying. Hale turned to Lyra, his voice low. Cadet Vance. That was not standard training. Who taught you to do that? Lyra looked away. No one. He stepped closer. Don't lie to me. But before she could answer, the walls shook. The Vorzen were approaching. Lyra moved toward the window and looked outside. She counted 4 shooters, 2 drones, and her heart stopped. A Vorzen commander, tall, armored in black. Horns longer than the others, and he was scanning the building with a glowing device. Looking for them? Lyra whispered. They brought a commander. That means they want prisoners. The cadets gasped. Jal swallowed hard. Prisoners? Why? Lyra didn't answer, but she knew the truth. The Vorzen did not waste. Time on weak targets, they hunted potential threats. And if they had come here, to a quiet colony, at the exact moment Class Sigma arrived, then this was not an accident. This was a test. A test for humanity. Hale clenched his teeth. We need to defend ourselves until reinforcements arrive. Lyra turned sharply. No reinforcements are coming. He froze. How do you know? Because she knew how the Vorzan operated, because she had survived them before. But she could not say that, so she said, because they blocked the signal completely. They wouldn't do that unless they had planned this in advance. The room fell silent. Hale breathed out slowly. Then we hold out as long as we can. We fortify. Cadets gather supplies. Barricade the windows. Create firing angles. The cadets scrambled to obey. Jalen approached Lyra cautiously. You knew this would happen, didn't you? No, she said. I only suspected something was wrong. But you recognize their weapons, their patterns, their tactics. How? Lyra didn't answer, because she couldn't. Outside, the commander stepped forward and pointed a glowing device at the building. Lyra's breath caught. She knew that device. It could scan heartbeats. It could locate fear. The Vorzon commander turned his head toward her window as if he sensed her, as if he remembered her. Lyra stepped back. Yelan frowned. What's wrong? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. They know who I am. Yelan stiffened. What do you mean? But Lyra's eyes were locked on the commander. She remembered. Another battlefield, another ambush, another day when she had been hunted. Her silence trembled, not from fear, but from memory. The Vorzon commander raised his weapon, and Lyra knew the ambush had only begun. Inside the south building, the air felt tight and heavy. Dust drifted down from the ceiling where the Vorzon blasts had shaken the walls. The cadets of Class Sigma pressed themselves against metal crates, tables, anything they could use as cover. Their breaths came quick and shallow, fear buzzing through them like static. Lyra Vance stood near the window, her eyes fixed on the Vorzon commander outside. His armor glowed with blue lines of energy, each pulse slow and as if he had already decided the outcome of this battle. He lifted his scanning device again. Step back, Lyra said. Quietly, Jalen, who stood just behind her, froze. Why? What's he doing? Lyra didn't look away from the commander. He's marking targets. He knows where we are. Instructor Hale heard her and moved closer. Explain what you mean. You've been giving tactical information since the attack began. How do you know so much about them? Lyra's fingers tightened slightly at her sides. She didn't answer. Hale stepped closer, lowering his voice. Cadet Vansa, are you hiding? Before she could respond, the commander outside planted a glowing beacon on the ground. Lyra's heart dropped. Get down! She shouted. A piercing sound ripped across the colony. Then a shockwave slammed into the building as the beacon detonated. The walls cracked. Windows shattered. Cadets hit the ground as debris flew everywhere. Lyra rolled behind a broken table and shielded. Her head's screams echoed through the room. When the shockwave finally faded, the building shook with heavy footsteps. Jal coughed, wiping dust from his visor. What? What was that? Lyra stood, steady and frighteningly calm. A breach charge. They're coming inside. Hale looked around at the frightened cadets. Everyone, 2 defensive positions. Don't let them through that door. But Lyra shook her head slowly. They won't come through the door. They'll break the west wall. The room fell silent. A moment later, boom. The west wall exploded inward. Vor. Zen soldiers stormed in through the smoke. Cadets screamed and fired stun rounds from their training pistols. Blue shots flashed across the room, but they barely slowed the towering aliens. Hale shouted orders. Fall back. Keep distance. Don't let them pin you. But the Vorzon were already advancing. One soldier grabbed a cadet by the vest and flung him across the room. Another swatted a pistol aside like it was nothing. The cadets were not prepared for this. They were student smart, determined, and loyal, but not trained for real war. Lyra moved before panic could grip her. She ducked beneath a Vorzon strike, slid across the floor, and grabbed a metal pipe from the rubble. With a single precise movement, she jammed it into the alien's armor joint. The Vorzon staggered, sparks shooting from his arm. Jal stared in shock. How did you butt? Lyra was already moving again. She sprinted toward the supply crates at the far end of the room and tore them open. Inside were emergency tools, geoscanners, welders, signal amplifiers. Useless for combatant, less you knew exactly how to use them. She grabbed 2 welders and threw one to Yelan. Turn the dial to maximum heat and aim for their joints. The armor plates can't bend at those points. Yelan fumbled with the tool. How do you know all this? She didn't answer. There was no time. A Vorzon lunged at them. Lyra rolled under his swing, activated her welder, and pressed the burning tip against his armor joint. The metal hissed. The alien roared in pain and collapsed. Jalayan cried out, Lorette, that's not normal training. You fight like a soldier. Her eyes sharpened. Keep your focus. We're not done yet. Across the room, Hale watched in disbelief. Lyra was moving with a level of skill and precision he had never seen from any cadet. Not even from most soldiers. He approached her as she caught her breath behind a barricade. Cadet Vance, I need answers. Now. Lyra kept her eyes on the enemy. Later. Now, Vance. You are showing knowledge and abilities you should not have. Where did you learn this? Lyra hesitated. Her silence stretched too long. Hale's eyes widened. You've seen them before, haven't you? Lyra closed her eyes briefly, pain flickering across her face. But then a roar shook the room. The Vorzin commander stepped inside. The cadets froze. His armor shone with dark energy, and his white eyes glowed behind his helmet. He carried a heavy pulse blade, its edge humming with power. He looked directly at Lyra. He spoke in a deep, vibrating voice. Human designation, Redline 03. Every cadet stared at her, JALE, and whispered Redline. Isn't that the commander took another step forward? We remember you, child. You survived when your unit fell. We have searched for you since. Lyra's hands trembled. Hale turned to her sharply. Unit? What unit? Lyra exhaled slowly, her voice low. Project Redline. The room fell silent. Even the Vorzin paused. Hale's face drained of color. Redline was shut down 15 years ago. All remaining operatives were killed, Lyra said softly. Yes, I know. Yolan stared at her, confusion and fear mixing in his eyes. Lyra, what are you saying? She swallowed. Her throat felt tight. I was part of it. I was trained as a tactical prodigy unit. Redline 03. We were hidden from public record. We learned to adapt to battlefield strategy from age 6. Gasps echoed through the room. Hale stepped back. That program was considered inhumane. They forced children into combat simulations. Yes, Lyra said quietly. They did. She didn't look at him. That's why I don't talk. That's why I don't want attention. Because if people knew, I would be used again, Ilan whispered Lyra. I didn't know. No one was supposed to know. The Vorzin commander raised his blade. Human designation, Redline 03. You escaped your fate once. You will not escape again. His signal. 3 Vorzin soldiers charged. Hola shouted. Defensive positions. Protect Cadet Vance. But Lyra stepped forward, her eyes cold and focused. No, protect yourselves. I'll handle them. Ilan grabbed her arm. Lyra, you can't fight them alone. She looked at him with a calm expression that chilled him to his bones. I'm not alone. I have all of you. Then she moved. Lyra launched herself at the first soldier with a speed no ordinary cadet should have. She ducked under a heavy strike, leapt off a broken beam, and landed on the alien's back. With both hands, she drove a sharp metal shard into the joint at his neck. The alien fell. The second charged with a roar. She rolled aside, grabbed a loose power cable, tore it free, and pressed its sparking end against his armor. Electricity surged through the Vorzin, dropping him in seconds. Yalon yelled, Lyra. Behind you? The third soldier swung his blade at her. Lyra blocked with a metal pipe, sparks flying. Her arms shook under the impact. She pushed back with a roar and slammed the pipe into the alien's helmet. Cracking the visor, the soldier stumbled. She finished him with a kick to the throat. The room fell silent. The cadet stared at her. Stunned Lyra, breathing hard but steady, wiped dust from her face. The Vorzin commander watched her with an unreadable expression. Then he spoke again. So it is true. A human child can become a weapon. Impressive. Lyra's jaw tightened. I am not a weapon. Then show me otherwise. He raised his blade. The ground trembled as he stepped forward. Hale shouted, Fall back! Class Sigma! But the commander ignored them all. His white eyes focused only on Lyra. She lifted her chin. Calm, despite the terror pressing against her chest. Her voice was quiet. If you want me, you'll have to go through all of us. The Vorzin commander paused. He looked at the cadets behind her. He laughed, a cold, echoing sound. Then prepare yourselves, humans. The real battle begins now. Lyra stood at the top of the old mining ridge, cold wind brushing past her face as she looked down at the ruined colony buildings below. Smoke rose slowly from shattered structures, spreading a gray layer over the land. Her classmates were scattered around the ridge, exhausted but listening closely as she explained the plan again. They knew better than to question her judgment now. The Vorzan were gathering for a final push. They had lost many troops in the earlier fights, but they were not a species that retreated easily. Their armored warforms were marching toward the colony, tall metal beasts with glowing red slits for eyes. Each step they took shook the ground softly. The cadets knew they could not stand against them in a simple fight. But Lyra was not planning a simple fight. Her voice stayed calm as she gave out roles. You three will move the fuel tanks into position. Keep your heads low. The Vorzan scanners are sweeping, she said. Team B, take the modified mining carts. Hide them behind the conveyor towers. We will use them when the main wave arrives. Her instructions felt unnatural coming from someone so quiet in the classroom. But here, under pressure, she had become something else. Something sharp, confident, and impossible to ignore. Damon, one of the older cadets, watched her with a mixture of respect and confusion. He whispered to the girl beside him, "How did the Academy hide someone like her?" The girl shook her head. "Maybe they didn't know," she said. "Or maybe they did, and they hoped no one else would notice." Below them, the Vorzan army continued its slow advance. Their machines hummed, lights flickering across their armor. They were preparing for destruction. But they had no idea how much destruction would meet them in return. Lyra knelt down, drawing rough lines in the dirt. The mining tunnels under the ridge are unstable. If we blow the supports, the whole section will collapse. It should take out at least half their warforms. Her tone was steady, but she paused. It's risky. If the blast spreads too far, it might take out parts of the ridge too. So when I give the signal, everyone runs. No hesitation. No looking back. The cadets nodded. They had learned that she never gave warnings without reason as they prepared. Lyra took a moment alone, stepping to one side of the ridge. She stared at the approaching enemy. In the red glow of their armor, shadows formed around their feet like thick fog. She closed her eyes, letting the memories she kept hidden crawl forward. A lab, bright lights, voices arguing above her. Training simulations that forced her heart to race until she could barely breathe. A test that she passed again and again, even when they changed the rules. Project Redline had shaped her into something the Academy had never intended to unleash. She opened her eyes and breathed in slowly. There was no going back to silence after this. The first Vorzan war form fired a plasma bolt across the open field. It hit a building near the cadets, sending pieces of metal flying. They all ducked. Lyra did not. She raised her hand. Move. Her voice cut the air sharply. The cadets sprinted to their positions, scattering across the ridge and down toward the colony ruins. Lyra ran with them, her legs steady and quick. She reached the main mining entrance and slid behind a metal beam. Two cadets rolled the large fuel tanks into place, their hands shaking as they struggled with the weight. "Are you sure this will work?" one asked. "It will," Lyra said. "Trust me." The Vorzan army moved closer. Their warforms lifted their weapons again. Lyra could hear the crackle of their energy cores heating. "They're preparing a volley," Damon shouted from behind a broken storage crate. "Good," Lyra answered. "Let them fire. We want them committed." The ground trembled harder now. The Vorzan marched in perfect formation, spreading across the slope, just as Lyra had predicted. Her eyes followed their path, calculating distances and angles silently in her head. "Team B," she called into her calm link. "Start the decoy run, now." 3 cadets pushed the modified mining carts forward. The carts had been outfitted with metal plates and old engines Lyra had repaired herself. The moment they started, they roared loudly, speeding down the slope. Their engines screamed, echoing across the battlefield. The Vorzan focused on them instantly. Plasma bolts filled the air, hitting the carts and blasting pieces off them. But the cart kept going, flames trailing behind. That should make them adjust position, Lyra whispered to herself, and it did. The warforms sidestepped, moving exactly where she wanted them. Team C, she said into the comlink. Ignite the fuel. A spark lit the first tank, then the second. Flames burst out, climbing quickly. The Vorzen paused, confused by the burning metal. They shifted again to avoid the heat. Lyra lifted the small detonator in her hand. Her thumb hovered over the button. She watched, waited, counted the steps. 3 more steps. 2, 1. She pressed it. The explosion hit the mining tunnels first. A deep, earth-shaking rumble shot through the ground, followed by a massive collapse. The ridge buckled, cracking like thin ice. Dirt and stone erupted into the air, then the entire middle section dropped. The Vorzen warforms fell with it. Their metallic roars echoed as they tumbled into darkness. Crushed by the falling rock, the shockwave spread outward, throwing smaller Vorzen soldiers off their feet. The cadets ducked behind cover as dust and debris blasted across the colony. When the ground finally settled, the once smooth slope had become a deep crater. Smoke drifted lazily upward. Damon stood slowly, coughing. Did it work? Lyra scanned the crater with narrowed eyes. More than expected, she said, but they were far from safe. From behind the rising dust, a massive shadow moved. One of the warforms had survived, though damaged. Its right arm dragged uselessly, sparks flying from it, but its left arm lifted, weapon glowing. The cadets panicked. "We can't fight that," someone cried. Lyra stepped forward before anyone else could move. She grabbed a fallen metal pipe from the ground. It was dented, dirty, barely usable, but enough for what she needed. "Keep its attention on me," she ordered. "Spread out. Don't bunch up." The cadets hesitated, unsure if she meant to fight the giant machine alone. But Lyra did not wait. She sprinted down the slope straight toward the surviving warform. It fired a plasma bolt. Lyra rolled aside, feeling the heat scorch past her cheek. She closed the distance quickly, using the smoke as cover. The warform's red eye tracked her. It aimed again. Lyra hurled the metal pipe at its head. The pipe struck the glowing slit, disrupting the aim for a moment. She used that moment to slide under the machine's damaged arm. The cadets watched, shocked, as she climbed the machine's side with quick, precise movements. She reached the exposed power core behind its shoulder. She ripped open the casing with a grunt, sparks spraying. The warform roared, shaking violently. "Hold still," she hissed. She grabbed one of the loose conduits and pulled hard. The machine convulsed, lights flickering wildly. She pulled again, harder. The core snapped loose. The warform collapsed instantly, falling to its knees before tipping onto its side. With a heavy thud, silence fell for a moment. Then the cadets erupted in shouts. "She did it. It's down." "Lyra, that was insane." But Lyra did not smile. She stepped away from the smoking machine, breathing hard. Her eyes scanned the horizon. She knew the Vorzen commander was still out there, and he would not accept defeat like this, as if answering her thoughts. A distant roar echoed across the land. Lyra tightened her grip on the broken conduit she still held. "Everyone regroup," she said. "This isn't over." They're preparing their final attack. The cadets hurried to her, their fear clear, but mixed with something new trust. Lyra stood in front of them, dust-covered, tired, and unshaken. "We survived everything they threw at us," she said. "Now we show them what humans do when cornered." The ground in the distance shimmered with heat as the last and strongest Vorzen wave approached. The battlefield waited, and Lyra Vance stepped forward once more. The sun was rising slowly over the ruined colony, painting the broken metal and dust-covered ground with weak golden light. The air smelled of smoke, heat, and the bitter scent of alien energy cores. Lyra stood at the center of what remained of the main street, her body tense as she watched the horizon. The final Vorzen wave was approaching, and this time the enemy commander was leading them himself. Her classmates gathered behind her. They were tired, bruised, covered in dirt, but their eyes were steady. They waited for her to speak, and Lyra felt the weight of that trust settle on her shoulders. She looked at them one by one. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "you did more today than anyone expected. You fought like soldiers." Damon stepped forward. "We fought because you told us how. Without you, we wouldn't even be alive." Lyra did not answer. Praise had never meant much to her. Survival meant more. A deep vibration traveled through the ground. The cadets stiffened. The Vorzen commander arrived. He was much taller than the warriors they had faced before. His armor was lined with sharp glowing patterns that pulsed like veins of fire. 4 mechanical limbs extended from his back, each tipped with weapons that hummed with energy. His steps were slow, confident, almost calm. Behind him marched the last of his army infantry units, shield carriers, drones, and 3 heavy warforms that looked even stronger than the one Lyra had destroyed earlier. The commander raised his head, scanning the battlefield. When his gaze settled on Lyra, the glowing markings on his armor brightened. He recognized her. He stepped forward, speaking in a deep, resonating voice that echoed across the ruins. Subject Redline. "The human weapon. I had wondered where you disappeared." Cadets looked at Lyra in shock. She did not look away. "I left that project," she said firmly. "You cannot leave what you were made to be." His voice carried no anger, only certainty. Lyra felt a flicker of old memories flash through her mind. The training rooms, the tests, the pressure to become something she never chose. She pushed the memories aside. "You were wrong," she said, "and I'm going to prove it." The Vorzen commander tilted his head as if studying her. Then he gestured with one of his mechanical limbs, and the entire enemy force spread out behind him. Preparing to attack, Lyra turned to the cadets. "Positions. Just like we planned." They scattered quickly. They had spent the night preparing for this moment, building barriers from broken vehicles, setting up improvised traps, connecting loose wires into electric trip lines, and marking the weak spots around the colony. Lyra had worked faster than anyone, moving like someone who had lived on battlefields far longer than her. Age should allow. Now everything would be tested. "Begin," the Vorzen commander said. The battle erupted. Instantly, plasma fire rained down on the colony. The cadets ducked behind metal barriers, returning fire with their training rifles. Explosions shook the street. Lyra sprinted across the open ground, weaving between blasts, shouting orders. "Demon, take the left flank." Kira pushed the drones toward the trap line. "Team 3 fall back to the generator station." The Vorzen infantry moved in tight formation, their armor reflecting the rising sun. They advanced slowly, absorbing the cadets' attacks like they were nothing. The drones swooped overhead, firing thin beams that sliced through metal. A trap triggered. A burst of electric current leaped from the tripwires, frying the nearest drones. They dropped like stones, crashing onto the street. Lyra didn't stop. She ran straight toward one of the heavy warforms. The machine lifted its cannon, firing a blast that scorched the ground behind her. She leaped to the side, rolled, and grabbed a discarded Vorzen pulse blade from the ground. The blade hummed desperately in her hand. She dashed forward, using broken walls as cover. The warform searched for her, its sensors scanning wildly. She jumped onto a fallen beam, used it as a ramp, and launched herself upward. Her blade tore into the machine's neck joint. Sparks erupted as she cut through the internal cables. The machine swung its arm, smashing into the wall. Lyra almost lost her grip but held on. She stabbed again. The warform collapsed, its lights flickering out. The cadets cheered for a moment until Vorzen commander charged. He moved faster than they expected, his limbs cutting through the air with deadly precision. One cadet was knocked aside by a shockwave. Another was disarmed. Damon barely blocked a blow that would have torn through him. Lyra landed on the ground and turned just in time to see the commander approaching. His armor glowed brighter with each step. "You fight well," he said, "just as the project intended." "I am not a project," Lyra snapped, lifting the pulse blade. "You are a weapon, created for war. You cannot deny your nature, Lyra charged. Their clash sent a shockwave through the street. The commander blocked her blade with one mechanical limb while another struck toward her side. She twisted away, barely avoiding the blow. She stabbed again, but he caught her arm. "The humans hide their strongest asset," he said. "A mistake." Lyra gritted her teeth. "The mistake was thinking they owned me." She drove her knee upward, hitting a weak joint in his armor. The commander staggered back. Lyra freed her arm and jumped away. The cadets opened fire, trying to cover her. Plasma bolts hit the commander's armor, leaving small dents but not slowing him. "Keep firing." Damon shouted. Lyra saw something, then something the commander had not noticed. The colony's old power generator behind him cracked open, leaking unstable energy. If she could draw him closer... She ran. The commander followed instantly, his limbs slicing the air as he chased her through the ruins. She ducked behind a fallen tower. One of his limbs speared through it, almost catching her. She rolled out, sprinting toward the generator. The commander stepped forward. Lyra turned sharply, sliding behind a broken generator coil. "Come on," she whispered. He approached her with slow, confident steps. "It is useless," he said. "You cannot escape what you are." Lyra tightened her grip on the blade. "I'm not trying to escape." She jumped onto the generator platform. The energy inside crackled dangerously. Blue sparks danced along the metal. The commander stepped after her. Then what? Lyra slashed the last. Stabilizing bolt, the generator screamed as the energy inside surged. She leaped off. The explosion tore through the platform, engulfing the Vorzan commander in a burst of white light. The shockwave threw Lyra into the dirt. She rolled until her back hit a shattered wall. Smoke filled the air. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the smoke cleared. The commander lay in the center of the blast zone. His armor shattered, his limbs bent at unnatural angles. His core flickered weakly. Lyra stood slowly, breathing hard. She approached him carefully. His single functioning eye glowed faintly as it followed her movements. "You were made to destroy," he said, voice breaking. "Yet you protect." Lyra knelt beside him. "Because I choose to." The commander's light dimmed. "The galaxy will fear humans. Let them," she said quietly. His core went dark. The last Vorzan soldier fell moments later. Silence spread across, one by one. The cadets stepped forward, gathering around Lyra. Damon placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," said. "No," Lyra said. "We did it." The sound of shuttle engines filled the sky. Reinforcements, human ships descended through the clouds. Landing around the colony, soldiers rushed out, scanning the field. Officers approached with stunned expressions as they took in the scene cadets alive. An entire Vorzan force defeated. An officer stepped forward. "Cadet Lyra Vance. What happened here?" Lyra looked at her classmates, tired, wounded, but standing tall. "We survived," she said simply. The officer nodded slowly. "You will all be taken for medical checks. After that, there will be many questions." Lyra expected that. She also expected something else, the fear in their eyes when they learned she had been part of Project Redline. But when she glanced at her classmates, they were smiling at her. Damon spoke quietly. "Whatever they ask, we'll tell them you saved us. That's what matters." Lyra did not smile, but her shoulders relaxed slightly. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. As the cadets were led toward the waiting shuttles, Lyra looked back at the battlefield one last time. The colony was destroyed. The Vorzan were defeated. Her secret was no longer hidden, and humanity had shown its teeth. Lyra turned and walked forward, ready for whatever came next.